first of all, thank you all for joining us on this session. As we just mentioned, it's been just over a full year since you submitted your LINC applications, and we'd hoped that most of you would have traveled by now, but circumstances are what they are, so we're actually happy to still be on this ride with you, and are looking forward to talking with you about how you can make your collaborations happen this year. Here on the Washington side for this call, we've got 4 members of our broader fellowship team. My name is Nnenna Ofobike-Lewis. I am the Senior Program Officer for Alumni Engagement for the fellowship here at IREX. I'm very proud to have been working on the fellowship since it began in 2014, first while working at the U.S. Embassy in Mozambique, and now here at IREX. And I'm also very happy to be working with a fantastic team here at IREX and at the Department of State that is really committed to helping alumni to make connections with each other and to collaborate and to properly implement this element of the fellowship that the State Department is sponsoring. So with that said, I'm going to turn to my colleagues, Kristen and Chris, to introduce themselves briefly, and then our counterpart at the Department of State, Maegen Smith. Go ahead, Kristen.
Great. Good morning to those of us on the East Coast here in DC. Good afternoon, or possibly even good evening, depending on where in the world or continent you're calling in from. My name is Kristen Shannon. I'm the Program Officer for Alumni Engagement here at IREX, working on the fellowship. I've been in this role for a little over a year now. Prior to that, I worked for a lot of youth exchanges, specifically those benefiting teenagers, and a lot of international exchange programs. So really excited to be here joining, and it was nice to briefly see the faces when we could. And so I'll turn it over to Chris.
Chris, are you able to unmute yourself? Chris may be having some technical problems. Maegen, if you're able to unmute, why don't you go ahead?
Hi, everyone. Can you see me? Okay, perfect. Hi, so I joined the Department of State team in February, and it's been such a joy to work with the team at IREX and then also learn about the fellowship and alumni programming, specifically the LINC grants. So we appreciate your flexibility and your understanding during this year, and we do hope that the information presented during this webinar will help you plan your activities for 2021. Please absolutely feel free to ask any questions today or reach out to the IREX team if they come up at a later point. We're ready to help. And back to you all.
Thank you, Maegen. Chris, were you able to unmute? Doesn't look like it. We'll move ahead and Chris can introduce himself at the end. For now, I'll return to the PowerPoint presentation and we'll move into our agenda. Again, for those who just logged on, for housekeeping, please go ahead and keep your videos off and your microphones off for the time being. If you're disconnected, you can just rejoin quietly whenever you're able to reestablish a connection. We are recording this webinar. It will be captioned and distributed to all parties after the meeting. And if you haven't already, please include your name and your cohort year and your country in the chat box so we know who's here. We're going to start with the introductions and the meeting objectives. We really would like to use this meeting to help outline your options for moving forward with your LINC collaborations and to answer any questions that you have as you're making your decision about how to move forward. Your safety and your health have been our top priorities and continue to be our top priorities, and that has really informed all of the decisions that have been made so far and the options that we're going to discuss today. So for the agenda for this webinar, we're going to start by briefly letting you know the status of the LINC collaborations, and then going on into a summary of the 4 options that we provided to you by email a few weeks ago. After that summary, we'll go into a little bit more depth about each of those options. So specifically your 2 options for in-person travel, your options if you choose to convert your collaboration to a virtual or a hybrid format, the steps and procedures if you wish to cancel your collaboration entirely, and then we'll sum it all up and wrap up with a discussion of the next steps at the end. And then we'll pause for questions at the end. So if you have questions as we're chatting now, you can either include them in the chat box or you can save them to the end and we'll have a Q&A session then. Moving into the current status of the LINC projects, right now 14 of your collaborations have been paused because of the coronavirus pandemic. And since May, when we asked you to indicate your intent in terms of how you want to move forward with your collaborations, 11 of your teams, so 22 people, have indicated that you still wish to move forward with your in-person collaboration and simply postpone it until sometime in 2021. 3 of the teams, so 6 people, have not yet shared your intentions for how or if you want to move forward. So you'll have the opportunity to share those intentions after this meeting when we send you the intent form and after we've gone through what your options are and what the procedures are for each of these choices today. So to give you the maximum flexibility in order to move forward with your LINC collaboration, the activity period for all of your postponed grants has been extended and now runs from January 18th until November 30th of 2021. So this means your collaborations cannot begin before January 18th, nor end after November 30th of next year. LINC travel will also be permitted within this same time period, pending confirmation from the Department of State that travel is safe. And we'll share more details about this in just a few minutes. So the 4 options you have moving forward are to first conduct your LINC collaboration in person and proceed with the travel dates as you've currently planned them, again, pending approval from the Department of State and IREX. You may also choose to postpone your travel to another date between January 18th and November 30th, subject to travel approval from the Department of State. Alternatively, you have the option to implement your LINC collaboration virtually, meaning that the grantee would not travel to the collaborators' countries, and instead both parties would collaborate remotely. Finally, if you wish, you also have the option to cancel your LINC collaboration and reapply in a future round. For each of these options, you may be required to submit updated budgets and work plans that reflect any changes to your approved LINC proposal. So with that summary, we'll now go into some important considerations you should think about for each of those options. And again, if you have questions as we go, either add them in the chat box or just mark them down and we can discuss at the end. So we'll start with your options for in-person travel. If the grantee and the collaborator decide to move forward with the grantee traveling in person to the collaboration country. If you choose to conduct your collaboration in person, travel will only be permitted when each of the following 4 conditions are met. First, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control, or the CDC, threat level for the destination country must be below a level 3. So for your reference, currently only Mauritius is below a level 3. All other countries in sub-Saharan Africa are at a CDC level 3. So in-person travel to those countries would not be permitted at this time if you were set to travel today. The second consideration is the State Department threat level for the destination country must be below a level 4. Likewise, travel will only be permitted if travel is allowed by that destination country. So in other words, the destination country must be open and allowing international visitors, and likewise, your own country must be allowing its citizens to travel to that destination country. Finally, the U.S. Embassy or the consulate in the destination country has to approve travel. So in evaluating travel requests, the U.S. Embassy or consulate may consider recent COVID-19 trends or regional conditions where the collaboration is set to take place. They may consider their own capacity to provide support. They may consider travel screening and quarantine requirements, etc. Each project will be carefully and individually considered against these 4 criteria. So the U.S. Department of State and IREX will review the travel safety 2 months prior to proposed travel dates and will inform you if your travel is approved. So to sum up really the procedures then, if you want to move forward with option 1 of maintaining your current travel dates and traveling in person, the first step would be to reconfirm your intended dates using the updated intent form that we'll provide you after this meeting. We'd ask that you please submit this intent form to us by November 30th, so we have a sense of how you wish to move forward. That's really the only action for you to take at this time if you want to move forward with your currently planned dates. IREX will notify you if it's safe to travel 2 months before your proposed travel dates, and at that time, if you're clear to travel, we'll request updated budgets and work plans as needed. If you are clear to travel, that travel must take place by November 30th, 2021. If you are not clear to travel, you'll be asked to email us to update your plans. So either to propose new travel dates or to switch to a virtual or hybrid option or to cancel your collaboration. If you instead wish to change the dates that you originally proposed and to postpone your travel dates to another period before November 30th, or if you've proposed dates and it's determined that it's unsafe to travel during that time, then you may postpone your collaboration. So we would again ask you to fill out the indication of intent form, including the new dates that you would like to postpone to, and to submit that form to us by November 30th. If at a later point you decide to postpone, if you're not ready to, if you decide you want to move forward with your original dates now, and then later you decide, nope, we'd like to wait a little bit longer, you can simply email us with those revised travel dates. All requests to postpone in-person travel must be made at least 2 months prior to your proposed dates and no later than July 31st, 2021. So for example, if you would like to shift your travel dates to take place in mid-June, you need to notify IREX no later than mid-April. So this gives us time to, it gives us as IREX, the Department of State, and your own team time to check the travel safety and to prepare for your program. So once we know your intended new dates, we will notify you if it's safe to travel 2 months before those travel dates, and we'll request an updated budget and work plan if needed. Again, if you're clear to travel, all of that travel must take place and your collaboration must end by November 30th, 2021. Please bear in mind that all date changes and changes to the scope of work for your intended collaboration are subject to Department of State approval and confirmation of travel safety. If you have questions about your options for in-person travel, again, please write them in the chat box or hold them until the end and we'll answer them at that time. In the meantime, we'll now discuss your options for converting your collaboration to a virtual or a hybrid format. So this is option 3. If you choose not to travel in person and instead wish to convert to a virtual option, you have that option to either do your collaboration all virtually or using a hybrid model. With each of these virtual options we're about to discuss, the grantee would not travel, and instead the collaboration would take place remotely. So the all virtual collaboration model, in that model, all the collaboration activities take place virtually. The participants, including the grantee, the collaborator, any project participants, they all participate in the meetings and events online exclusively, and there are no in-person components. No in-person gathering is required in an all virtual collaboration. A hybrid collaboration, on the other hand, the collaboration activities would still take place virtually, but limited in-person gatherings would also be permitted in the grantee's country, the collaborator's country, or both. So for example, the grantee could virtually participate in-person workshops or events that the collaborator is hosting in their community, or vice versa. In these cases of hybrid collaborations where there is some in-person component, the US Embassy or consulate in that country must approve in-person activities. So I'm going to turn it to Kristen for a moment to give some examples of all virtual and hybrid collaboration models so you can better understand the possibilities for each of them and the procedures. So Kristen, the floor is yours. You're still on mute, Kristen.
Okay, I was really getting into it. Okay, are you hearing feedback?
No.
Okay, I can hear an echo on my end. Okay, so for this next section, what I'd like to do is just spend a few moments going over some hypothetical examples of what an all virtual model could look like, and also what a hybrid model could look like. So I'll start by giving the example of an all virtual LINC. So for instance, let's say you have a LINC Grant team whose original work plan involved a 2-day in-person event, a workshop consisting of networking events to connect teen girls with women working in STEM, with the ultimate goal of empowering them to pursue similar careers. So given the COVID-19 context, this LINC Grant team, which consists of a 2014 fellowship alumna from Malawi and a 2018 fellowship alumna from Ghana, they decided to change their collaboration model to a 2-day virtual girls STEM empowerment conference. So this could include anything like virtual keynotes from prominent African women working in STEM, and also sector-specific panel, perhaps even one-on-one career coaching. So with the switch to a virtual model, both LINC participants could use their grant funding to cover costs such as a Zoom subscription to allow for longer sessions and more advanced features. Let's say they would like to purchase Wi-Fi signal boosters to increase their internet capacity. A graphic designer would also be an allowable cost, so if they would like to create any sort of promotional materials, that would be allowed. If they had participants or were expecting participants with disabilities, they could also recruit a sign language interpreter or other interpretation services. Another cost that they could use is a virtual event production company to just make sure that things run smoothly on the day of. So the real pivot in this case involves investing that LINC Grant funding in technology and production quality, as opposed to some of the more in-person features like venue rental that they would be needed, of course, for the in-person event. And so for the next model I just want to talk about is hybrid. So let's say you have a LINC Grant team that decides to collaborate on a project, training women farmers from rural Zimbabwe in just hydroponics and other sustainable agriculture. So the collaborator, let's say a 2017 fellowship alumna from Zimbabwe, could convene a group of 15 women farmers for an in-person workshop at a local meeting venue. So this gathering should, of course, comply with all local COVID-19 restrictions and social distancing guidelines. So for the first 2 days of the workshop, the collaborator could virtually connect the women farmers with the grantee, 2018 fellowship alumnus from Kenya, and they could do this, through laptop, the venue's projector, as well as Zoom. So through Zoom, the grantee would then be able to share a PowerPoint that would then be able to demonstrate some of these farming techniques. They could also do a virtual representation of how to actually build one of these hydroponic farming systems. So on the remaining days of the workshop, since this is a hybrid model, the collaborator could then reconvene those women farmers in person on an actual farm to experiment with whatever they learned virtually. So in addition to this, let's say the grantee could also do feedback sessions or virtual consultations with the women. So you see that there's both virtual and in-person at play here. So with this virtual model, both in-person and virtual elements are used to benefit program participants. But the key point to remember here is, like with the all virtual model, the grantee still does not travel. So for this next slide, I just want to do an overview of the key elements and procedures for both virtual and hybrid models. So with the hybrid collaboration, this can include in-person activities either in the grantees country, the collaborators country, or both. In-person activities taking place as a part of the hybrid model must, of course, abide by whatever social distancing rules and regulations there are, as well as any rules or regulations around large gatherings. So in addition to these country-specific guidelines, in-person activities will also be subject to U.S. Embassy or consulate approval. And this next point is important. If for some reason shipping materials are required for your collaboration, LINC Team should conduct thorough research on potential shipping delays if they are hoping to switch to the all virtual or hybrid model. So it is also important to have a backup plan if for some reason the shipping causes materials not to arrive to whatever venue they're needed in. So since virtual and hybrid collaborations remove travel costs, including things like flights, meals, lodging, and similar expenses, the budgets for virtual and hybrid LINC collaborations will be capped at $2,700. So to give you a look at some of the costs for both models, allowable costs for LINCs could include things like Wi-Fi boost or data plans, modems, a Zoom license or subscription to similar teleconferencing software, marketing services, for example, design expenses, as I was mentioning earlier, software, any sort of ASL or interpretation services for those who maybe have disabilities, and event production services. For the hybrid model, additional allowable costs includes things like project materials, shipping expenses, venue or the actual space to have the gathering, any sort of AV equipment or technology such as cameras, microphones, etc. And of course, PPE, so things like masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer. So I know that was a lot, but there will be time at the end for us to go through some FAQs and answer whatever questions you have, but feel free to type whatever questions come to mind right now in the chat. Otherwise, I'll turn it over to Nnenna to do a little bit of an overview on the final option, which is, of course, canceling your collaboration.
Thanks a lot, Kristen. Okay, and as Kristen said, again, if you have questions about converting to a virtual model, go ahead and write them in the chat or hold them until the end while we discuss canceling your collaborations and then the next steps. So LINC teams that choose not to move forward with their collaboration in person, virtually, or through a hybrid model may cancel their collaboration without prejudice and reapply in the future. At this time, we expect to launch the next round of LINC grant applications in the January-February of 2021 period, and that would be for travel through November 2021. Future rounds for LINC will be announced at a later date. Now, if you cancel your LINC grant and funds, any funds that have already been dispersed must be returned to IREX. And we will share specific details about the process for returning LINC grant funds with any teams who choose to withdraw. If you cancel your LINC grant, we will reimburse collaboration expenses that you have already paid with personal funds. So for example, if you've already paid for a visa or your flight costs before the grant was dispersed, then we will be able to reimburse those funds. So before we break for questions, I just want to quickly review the options we've discussed and to outline the next steps. To review your 4 options once again, you may conduct your LINC collaboration in person and proceed with your travel dates as currently planned, pending travel approval from the Department of State and IREX. That travel approval will be based on CDC and State Department threat levels, travel policies in the destination and origin countries, and approval of the U.S. Embassy or consulate in the destination country. You also have the option to postpone your travel to another date between January 18th and November 30th of 2021, again, subject to those same State Department travel, to that same State Department travel approval. Alternatively, you can implement your LINC grant virtually, meaning that the grantee would not travel and both parties would collaborate remotely. That virtual collaboration could either be all virtual with no in-person components at all, or hybrid with limited in-person components in the grantee, collaborator, or both countries. Finally, you have the option to cancel your LINC collaboration and reapply, and your application will be considered without prejudice in a future round. In terms of the next steps, we'd really like to encourage you to take your time and carefully consider your schedules, your personal comfort in traveling, the trends in your destination country, and the options for converting your collaboration to a virtual format. Keep in mind the requirements that have to be met for in-person travel. Once you've thought through all of these options and conferred with your collaborator, your grantee, please submit your updated intent form to us by November 30th of this year to indicate your initial decision. And again, you'll receive that intent form after this meeting. We understand that your conversations may still be ongoing by late November, but it's really helpful to IREX and to the Department of State and the embassies to have an idea of your thinking before the end of the year so that we can best support you. Any decisions or dates that you indicate in your form will not be binding, and if necessary, they may be changed up to 2 months prior to any proposed travel, but no later than July 31st. So we'd like you essentially to make your final decision on how you wish to proceed no later than July 31st. LINC teams who have already received grant payments and still plan to go forward with their collaboration may continue to hold on to those funds for the time being. Please do not spend any additional grant funds without approval from IREX. If you choose to cancel your collaboration, those funds that have already been dispersed must be returned to IREX. And as a reminder, per the terms and conditions of the LINC grant, you must retain receipts for any expenses exceeding $75 or the equivalent in your local currency. So any expenses paid for with LINC grant funds that are over $75 require a receipt. If receipts are not available, you can document the expense details, including the date, the amount, and the purpose of the expense, and keep it for your records. As we mentioned at the beginning, the recording of this video will be posted on Canvas, which is available through the Mandela Washington Fellowship portal. If you have not yet registered for an account, for a portal account, please do so as soon as possible. We will include the registration link in an email after this webinar. And so at this point, we'll open the floor for questions. We're posting a few of the frequently asked questions here in the slide. I'll leave this up for the time being so you can read through, and then I'll turn them off so we can talk face to face. But if there are any questions in the chat or any questions anyone has at this time, please feel free to unmute your microphone and ask. And Kristen, if you don't mind, if you could scan through the chat and just read out any questions that have come up.
Hello, I have a question. So we have been filling I think it was the last LINC form with my partner, and we had requested to have it postponed for, if I'm not mistaken, it was February. Is it something that has been taken in account, or we have to submit a new form?
Good question, Benedict. Thank you. We would like you to submit a new form just to reconfirm that those are the dates you intend to move forward with. So if you're basically moving ahead, if you'd like to move ahead with the dates you originally proposed, then that form will just say, I would like to continue with my original dates. These are the dates, and that's all that you have to do at this point.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Or are there any other options that you'd like us to review for those who maybe came online a little bit later?
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I'm Delali from Togo.
Hello, Delali. Nice to hear from you.
Yes, I would like to appreciate your initiative for this time that you have taken for us in order to highlight those details for us. I want to thank you first. And I would like to know, in case we want to, is it possible to go beyond November 2021? Is it possible?
Sorry, I'm sorry, go ahead. Was there more to your question?
Yes, I would like to know if it is possible to go beyond November 2021 for the implementation of the project.
Yes, good question. So it's not possible. The activity period for this round of the LINC Grant ends on November 30th, 2021. So all projects, all collaborations must conclude by that point. If you have a collaboration that would extend beyond that period or that would start, that would need to extend beyond November 2021, we'd suggest that you consider canceling your current collaboration and reapplying for a future round that would take place in 2022.
Okay, thank you. What will be something that will be added in case we want to reapply next year? Or taken into consideration, will our application will be taken into consideration in case we want to reapply?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, Delali, I think I missed the beginning of your question. Could you ask it again, please?
Okay, sorry, I would like to know if our application, in case we want to reapply to the LINC Grant, will our application will be reconsidered for the next year? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. Yes, if you'd like to cancel your current collaboration, you can reapply. It would require a new, an entirely new application. So you would submit a new work plan and budget and application, and include any changes you would like to make, and it would then be considered for that round. The next application round will start in January or February of 2021 and go through November. And then for projects taking place after that, the dates for those application rounds will be shared at a later time.
Okay, thank you very much. But we will plan to continue our project, and we pray for this implementation of our project from theory to practice in Togo. Thank you.
Thank you, Delali.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nnenna from Nigeria. Can you hear me?
Hi, Obana.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm speaking from Nigeria. So I have a question, or maybe rather just a clarification for be able to conduct or rather implement virtually, considering the participants that we're looking to work with. But my question is this, would there be options to review budgets that were submitted, especially considering the fact that one would want to factor in some items like PP for the in-person meeting, and this was not originally factored in our submitted budget. So I don't know if there is that flexibility for reviewing budgets to capture those items such as hand sanitizer and face masks. So I think that's what I want to find out. Thank you, and over.
Thank you, Abana. It was difficult to hear part of your question, but I think I understood it as essentially asking if there'll be the opportunity to review and include additional items in the work plan or budget to accommodate needs for PPE, et cetera. And if that's your question, then yes. When you indicate the new dates for your collaboration and the model that you'd like to choose, excuse me, as part of that process, if approved, we would ask you to submit an updated budget and work plan that would include those costs and any other activities that were not included in your original application. So they would be reviewed and decided upon at that time.
Okay, thank you very much. This is big help. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions?
Yes, there are questions. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Fumi.
All right. Thank you, Nnenna and Kristen, for hosting this. This is Fumi Lori from Nigeria. I'm going to be having my collaboration with Cindy in Swaziland. And it was really, really difficult to get my visa to South Africa when I was applying. I actually got it, and now I have to renew it again. So what I want to ask is what Obina had also asked, to say that can we review the budget, and would it cover the cost of the previous visa application and the new visa application? Then the second thing I want to ask is, for some of the, during this COVID season, my collaborator was able to get some work done as part of the things we were doing. So we're wondering, will that also be captured, or we wait till when I actually visit a country? So I'm asking the pre-work that we're doing, should it be captured in the budget, or we just wait till when we're due to start the process? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions, Fumi. To your first question about whether you can include the cost for new visas, for example, for visas that have expired and so on, you can include those in your budget. Each budget will be reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but certainly in this case, if your initial visa expired and has to be renewed, that would be an allowable cost. And sorry, Abina, if you'd asked a similar question, it's possible I missed it, so apologies. As to the question about the work that's being done before the project period, that's an interesting question that we'll have to consider and get back to you on. The initial question I have and following up on that is whether there have been any costs that have been, there have been costs associated with the work that's being done right now. And just to note that the official sort of activity period for your grant would not begin until January 18th. So bear that in mind if you're doing sort of establishing programs or this sort of thing right now. But we'll have to give that question a little bit more consideration and get back to you.
Right, thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Does everyone feel comfortable with the 4 options presented? And again, after this webinar, we will send you an email that recaps some of the discussion. Early next week, we'll have the recording of this conversation available, and then we're always available for follow-up questions by email. Fumi, go ahead.
Okay, no, when you were asking a question, I won't say yes. I were just going to conclude.
Sorry, it broke up while you were speaking, but I think you were just affirming that you understood the 4 options. So thank you, thank you for doing so. Are there any other questions from anyone? If not, I'm going to end the recording. But I would, if you could indulge us once more, I would love it if you could turn your cameras on for a moment again so we can see everyone's faces for those who came on late, we were just observing that we've been in touch with you by email for over a year now and know you only from your fellowship biography pictures. So it'd be good to see what you actually look like. There they are. Wonderful. Great. Delali, good. Nice to see you all. So we're the faces as well behind the emails. You'll hear mostly from Kristen, and occasionally you'll see me in copy. And it's wonderful to see you as well. So thank you again for taking the time to join the call this morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are. We will conclude at this time. If you have questions, you know how to reach us by email as well by WhatsApp. Feel free to use either that's most convenient for you. And we look forward to supporting you in making your collaborations work in this coming year. So take care and stay safe out there, and all the best from here in Washington.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Take care. Bye.